Happy full moon. Lunar eclipse. Even crazier. It's going to be, some people are saying, if you're on Western astrology, you're saying that it's in Pisces and Virgo, with Pisces being the sun sign, Virgo being the moon sign, full direct access to that. But if you are into Vedic astrology, then you know that it is in Leo, and it's in Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, which is a nakshatra that really has to do with love and value and pleasure and just the ideas of romance. So why it's actually important to know which sign system that you're following and why it does make a difference is because this lunar eclipse is a pretty heavy one. I've gotten a few calls of friends that are dealing with some pretty heavy things. One of my friends, my heart goes out to her the most because she lost somebody very dear. And it's just, I don't want to get anybody nervous or anything about, how the moon and everything, connects to like the darker areas of life or things like that. That's definitely not where I'm going with this. But I do think that it is a big deal to speak on a certain placement that is happening, and it's a really heavy one. And I think that more people should know about it. So depending on your system, which I follow Vedic astrology, you do have two large planets that have really connective impact to love and discipline, which is Saturn and Venus, and they both went into Pisces today. Depending on whatever system that you follow, that may actually look different on the chart than if you follow Vedic astrology. And the reason why is because when it comes to Western astrology right now, that would mean that Saturn is actually going to be aspecting this lunar eclipse because of the fact that in tropical astrology, it's focused more on the Virgo symbol right now of having the moon have its eclipse in, where honestly, if you do take a second, and this is kind of where I myself will even, be honest, I was a big Western astrologer at one point, and once I actually started diving deeper into where the planets are actually placed in the sky, so I started using, for example, apps like Sky Tonight, it actually showed me that there was a clear difference between Western astrology and Eastern. And so if you actually take your phone now and download the app Sky Tonight, you will see very clearly that the sun is currently in Aquarius. It has not left Aquarius yet and gone into Pisces, but with following the tropical astrology, as far as with Western astrology, it will tell you that we're currently in Pisces season. That being said, there is a big difference because if the sun is in Virgo in the tropical settings, and that means that Saturn is actually opposing the sun at the current moment, it also says that the moon and Saturn are actually conjunct, which that's not actually what's going down at the moment. So why this is a big deal is because you're going to get very different opinions on what is actually going on. With Saturn being more of a disciplined planet, it really honestly says that that energy is going to be conjunct the moon. So there's going to be some aspects of discipline, and then that's going to actually target the ego. And that's not necessarily what's going on. We actually have a grander situation that's really happening that I feel like Vedic is really pushing in deep to get people to understand, where there is a difference between Rahu and Ketu and the North Node and the South Node, where the equivalency would be Rahu and the North Node being kind of the same concept, but Rahu having a lot deeper of a understanding and an energy and being a really big player when it comes to how you navigate your birth chart. And then K2 would be considerably the same thing as a South Node, but it's so much more than that. Okay, so just some background information so that way it's not confusing. So where there is North Node in Western astrology, there is Rahu in Eastern astrology. Why this is a big difference is because When you look at the concepts of the North Node and the Western side will tell you to go towards the direction of the North Node as this is your destiny, whereas when it comes to the South Node, it's something that you've come from. Where in Eastern astrology, the South Node concept is actually represented by K2. These are completely different concepts because it's not even the fact of it just being a direction of going towards destiny and utilizing things from the past in order to go towards that destiny. It's a lot deeper than that when you look at what Rahu and K2 actually represent in Eastern astrology. So when you look at the story of Rahu and Ketu, it actually was a demon that was called Swabanu. I think I'm saying this the correct way. Swabanu, something like that. And he was cut by Lord Vishnu because he was trying to drink the internal life soma that was actually present to give the gods their internal life. And he was drinking it without permission, and he didn't have the most positive intentions. So he was actually separated into two pieces, one representing the head and one representing the tail or the rest of the body. The head is actually Rahu, which represents the parts of our lives that we become almost delusional about, illusionary, obsessive. It's the part of us that's never truly satisfied, no matter how much we go towards that direction. And the K2 is actually representing the spiritual part of us. It's the void, the part that denies the earthly plane and actually goes home to source and to God and connects with God truly at its core. Now, how does this tie into the full moon? Now, we've got some serious conjunctions when it comes to the Eastern astrology line of it. We have K2 representing detachment and spiritual understanding, conjuncting with the moon, and that's going to be in Leo. And then we also have a crazy stellium that's going on in Pisces. I'm sorry, not Pisces, in Aquarius. I'm mixing now the two together. We have this in Aquarius, and that's going to be the Sun, Rahu, Mars, and Mercury are all underneath the same quarters, all just like collected underneath each other in Aquarius, which is a lot of potent energy. And then to the side of that, we've got Saturn and Venus conjunct, which is giving a little bit of a ability to kind of take some of this pressure away, and they're in Pisces. Now, I want to take a time to talk about each section because I did talk about something that was pretty heavy. When you think of the K2 and the moon conjunct in that concept just in general, depending on which rising sign you have, that energy automatically is connected to some concepts that have to do with your parents, in my personal opinion. I say this because it has the axis of moon, which usually K2 is detachment from something, and the moon is the mother, or the moon is also the internal self, or thoughts that are inward, or what in Western astrology they call it the IC, which is the Amun Coeli, representing the fourth house. It has everything to do with a detachment from the mind, detachment from the mother, detachment from nurturement, but then also because it's in the sign of Leo, there's this energy of the father as well, because the sun is basically the father energy that's in a birth chart. So with this connecting to the fact that you've got K2 conjunct the moon, so K2 or detachment of self, detaching from those concepts of the fourth house energies or the mother or the Cancer energy, but it's in the sign of Leo. In my personal opinion, I think there's going to be some awareness of the masculine and feminine energy that's within your life on a mental level, as well as also the contradictions of the emotional self to the ego and how they're really connecting. Is the emotional self actually giving room for the ego to actually play its part? Is the ego truly being able to give the emotional self room to be able to process itself? Because the thing about it is a lot of people feel like the ego is a negative thing, but without the ego, you would not even be present. The ego is actually what defines your separation from everybody else that's within this one realm. So it's not a negative concept. It's just the true fact that honestly, you don't want the ego running the show. So the ego is kind of supposed to represent almost like a chat GPT concept. It's supposed to be basically your soul or your spirit tells the ego what it wants it to render, and then your ego goes and puts into action. The way that ends up turning up negative is if a person is disconnecting from their emotional self, or they're disconnecting from their inner voice to the point where they're letting the ego self run the entire show. It's almost like being like, hey, ChatGPT, I just want you to kind of run my life and do whatever it is that I feel like will keep me safe. And ChatGPT will kind of just pull from all the areas of all the energies that it's pulling from all the information, and create this concept that's not actually present. It doesn't identify you to being an actual person, but it almost just kind of responds to its environment and then seeks approval by utilizing concepts of orientation and connecting to see if it's actually working. So if you're having some struggles with really truly understanding your identity, this would be a keynote to be able to see how important it is that you develop that, because without your personal identity, you just kind of are creating this image that other people are just responding off of, and that's just pretty much how you're navigating life. And it's just kind of like you're a cog, is pretty much the best way to put it. And that's not really how you want to live your life. So that's just covering the ego concept. But when you look at the fact that now K2 is conjunct the moon, this is also challenging some energies of almost being like, what are my personal and true emotional feelings? What are the things that make me who I am? And if you can't figure out what those things are, you tend to fight that part of yourself, and you fight it so heavily that you go inward, basically like, it doesn't work, and then it makes you force that energy outward, and then now you're just extremely egotistical. This can show up as irritability, this can show up as anxiety, this can show up as complete breakdowns. There's so many negative pathways that this can take, because truthfully, it's basically giving the opportunity for the ego in a lot of ways to die. You're detaching from the part of you that's almost like stable. And so anything that comes up in that process, like the fire is going to show itself, and that's really what it's going to be about. Now, putting that same energy into Purva Phalguni, it has everything to do with your desires. It has to do with romance. It has to do with a rest break of really being able to take in life's desires and beautiful things. If you honestly are removing your emotional senses and then going into your ego and focus more about the desires of life and fulfilling things that look pretty on the outside, it could really cause some irritations to where like it can kind of eventually just break up all those facades. It'll break all those facades that you've kind of been giving other people, and it kind of just brings a lot of the truth of who you are to the forefront. Now, before I go into the truth of who you are and how that connects to also those desires that are being aspected by Rahu at that point, what I would say is like, I want to be honest with you guys. A lot of this energy can also turn into some really serious battles with your mother, and how your mom showed up in your life, or it could turn into even some detachments of the mother. And that's why it was a heavy thing for me to get that phone call, because for me, once I knew the placements, I was kind of like, whoa, like it's one of those things that you can't deny, and it really does test that relationship bond with the mother energy. And or there could be some health issues or certain things that occur with the mother or with the mind because of this placement. Now, if you're somebody that is a mother and you are struggling with tapping into your emotional understanding of self, that is also going to be a huge challenge for you, because this moon is basically causing you in a lot of ways to like disintegrate the areas that are not emotionally celebrated by your existence. And it's really supposed to be a beautiful release because it is in Leo, and there is a concept. I have K2 in Leo, so I know this. There's this detachment from the ego where it allows you to really be able to illuminate into self. And like, luckily with me, I have Sun and Mars conjunct that same placement. So there is this element where now Sun brings that energy back into forefront and says, even though we're detaching from the ego, we're still celebrating the undertones of what that Sun energy really represented. And so it really allows me to truly shine a part of my personality that I would have typically, allowed to kind of have a death and rebirth, letting go of true ego, letting the emotional self come through, letting the dramatic and theatrical and loving, shining energy come through. And there's this beautiful balance there when you have, the energy of K2 conjunct the moon, and then also having the Leo tied into it, because it's really challenging you. It's challenging you to really see both sides of self. It's challenging you to really be able to say, it's not that either one is mattering more, but they have to learn to work together. And that's really where those two placements combined could cause some irritation if you're not equipped to understanding your emotional self, or you're not equipped to even accepting the parts of yourself that is your ego. That's when it's going to be a challenge the most. Now connecting this with the sun aspect. So now you've got Rahu, Sun, Mars, and Mercury all in Aquarius. This is very heavy energy. The reason why is I just want to even just talk about how, like, we've got Mars in Aquarius. Mars in Aquarius is going to be very proactive about things that have to do with social activism and things that are just not right in overall society, where there's a collective understanding of how things are being ran. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. So it is everything having to do with rebellion, having to do with, like, what is not working for the collective, what is not working in response to making everybody understand that everybody has a even role, where they're supposed to be loved, they're supposed to be heard. And you know, that's where that Leo energy is coming from. What part of you is not being heard? So with Mars in Aquarius, it makes a lot of sense why there is so much going on right now in a political battle on what people are feeling that the world is really, like, going through. Now, I'm not going to get into politics with anybody or share my personal opinion, but what I would say is that it makes a lot of sense of why there is a lot of angry people, why there are multiple sides of people going through different things right now, right? We've got stuff going on, like, all over the country as well as all over the world, and they're all happening at the same time. And that normally happens. I know there's going to be a lot of skeptics that are going to be like, dude, that happens all the time, right? But it's getting extremely loud and extremely heavy, and a lot of it is having to do with those energies all being conjunct. Now, when you're looking at Rahu and Aquarius, there's an obsession of rebellion now. There's an obsession of wanting to make sure that you're at the beat of your own drum. The reason why I know this is because I have Rahu and Aquarius in my chart, and when I tell you, that is the number one thing that I get from people is you always do what the opposite of society does. Anybody that knows me knows I absolutely hate trends. I hate people doing things that everybody's grouping together and being like, look, I can do it too. It's really annoying to my energy. I'm like, be an original, be somebody that actually is not afraid to speak up in a crowd of people that are all following the same shit. Like, be your own person. So that energy combined with, like, Mars and Aquarius is already going to make people amplified as it is. And now you're adding the energy of the sun, which is the ego. And then you're also putting Mercury in Aquarius, which Mercury in Aquarius is, I mean, Mercury in itself, you've got Gemini connected to it. But I feel like Mercury in Aquarius really just does not give a fuck. In my personal opinion, Mercury in Aquarius is going to say whatever everybody wanted to say, even if it makes somebody uncomfortable, even if it makes somebody unsteady. It's just going to say whatever it needs to say, and it's going to fluently say it, because Aquarius is just constant flowing energy and Mercury is ready. Let's put this together first and foremost before I dive into all the other planets. You're having the energies of the emotional self and the ego coming together internally and trying to figure itself out. Where you're struggling with the ego and you're being loud in emotions, you're going to have conflict. Where you're struggling with seeing yourself separated from others and you're trying to join into a constant group of emotional feeling and emotional energy and sharing thoughts, you're going to have issues of where you're going to start to feel like you're not being heard, because your ego is going to want to shine itself. It's all in Leo. So everything is about shining that part of yourself. But then on top of it, this is also aspecting the energy of rebellion, obsession with speaking up, obsession with not actually going with the crowd. So there's just a lot of tense energy that is present. And all of this is also in question with how your parents raised you, because now you've got the energy of the moon, which is also the mother, and then you've got the sun with Leo also being present. And that's also the sun is with the father. So there's like masculine and feminine energy screaming at each other, trying to balance each other out, while there's all of this rebellious energy coming from all different angles. It is saying, like, death and rebirth. That is the best way to put it. It's giving Phoenix energy. It's also giving, depending on where you are in your life, if you're somebody that's accepting towards this energy coming in and you're willing to purge out what's not working for you, you're going to feel like this is like really releasing something for you. But if you're somebody that wants to just kind of like play it safe, this is going to be some really screwed up energy for you. You are going to be so uncomfortable, and you're unfortunately probably going to display it in every area of your life. It's going to be in your career. It's going to be in your family. It's going to be in how you feel about yourself. There's going to be some tense irritability that you are not going to be comfortable with. And depending on where it is in your rising sign and your moon sign is how it affects you. Now, let's add the other energies to it. Now, this is where it kind of gets a little bit helpful. We've got Saturn, which is the planet of discipline, and then we have Venus, which is the planet of love, expression, artistic creativity. These two planets are now conjunct in Pisces. So the good thing about this is that Venus is actually exalted in Pisces, and then Saturn in Pisces has kind of been traveling over some time. We just got out of the retrograde of Saturn in Pisces, I believe on November 20th of last year, where there's been like a constant angle of like what the discipline of fluidity is in your life and how spirituality shows up. Personally, how it's occurred for me is I've actually deep dived the Bible and learned so much about that, because for me, it was really attacking my 12th house of what spirituality really meant. And I was actually trying to figure out why astrology was demonized so much in Christianity, and why with my newfound love for Christianity, I was still not feeling like I was being accepted. I was genuinely pissed off, because it was like, why have I been doing the science for so long and it's been helping people, and yet when I go towards Jesus, I feel like I'm being condemned for something that has actually worked in a positive way? That's when I went really deep diving into understanding the Bible, and I started to read it chronologically in order, and I finally got to a place where I said, let me really focus on, understanding Job. And Job was the first time that it made sense to me that astrology is absolutely accepted when it comes to Christianity. But this is the difference between when you see the church energy as the Pharisees, and also understanding that the kingdom of God is actually within you. This is something that really challenged my understanding towards community, what people accept, and also just like general societal approval. And I know there's so many people that can come at me all day and be like, oh my God, it's demonic, it's this, it's that. I guarantee you half of the people that are telling me astrology is demonic are actually people that have never actually read the Bible. Bible verse hopping around the Bible is not reading the Bible. If you cannot sit and actually read the Bible and understand the story, then like, who are you to condemn anybody for anything that they believe in? Because if you really were to be able to understand it, first of all, the Old Testament and New Testament are two completely different covenants. And in the end of it, when you look at it truly, Jesus, or what his real name is, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and I apologize if I'm not, Yeshua, that is a completely different concept than what was actually admitted in the Old Testament as being like the covenant. It's completely different. And really, it's really about loving thy neighbor is what Jesus actually taught. And there's a lot of alchemy that people do not want to talk about in the Bible that people are just not comfortable with. Anywho, not to make this about me, but what I will say is that for those that are still struggling, but are still actually watching the story because they're really interested in astrology, but they feel like they're doing something demonic, check out Job, the book of Job, and it will actually speak about the sweet influences of the Pleiades, as well as how he asked Job, can you bring forth the Mazzaroth in its season? And that honestly is like, if you look in Hebrew, like Mazzaroth literally means zodiac signs. So, something that I have no problem with. If any of my friends who really want to genuinely study that and has questions, I'm here for it. But please do not ever DM me anything about Jesus when I post tarot cards or astrology or any of that, because after the season of what Saturn and Pisces have been taking me through, this girl is strong in her conviction that she's doing something absolutely beautiful. And you probably didn't read your Bible correctly. Just letting you know. That being said, everybody, depending on wherever Pisces is in your chart, there's going to be some discipline that's present, or there's going to be a journey that you've been taking this year that's really connected to that. But with having Venus in Pisces, it's an exalted time frame for Venus. And so through this, although there's all these really combative energies that have to do with speaking up to what is not right, speaking up to what is not working for society anymore, and people actually speaking out to certain things that they really truly believe that needs to be spoken out about, there's still this really pure energy of that. The root of it is because people really truly just want real love, real honest love. Now, I know there's a lot of people that will disagree with me because there's so many different sides of it, but when you look at the bigger picture, many of the people have their belief systems that are already based off in what they've come from, and to them, just because it doesn't make sense to you, they are looking at things a lot differently, and it's in the name of what love in their particular society or their particular upbringing means for them. And so I would almost challenge everybody to, instead of attacking each other, this is a good time frame during this Venus and Pisces energy to really actually start to listen to each other and be more disciplined about that, because it's not always about what you feel. It's not always about how you see the world. Again, we've got this energy of K2 in Leo conjunct the moon. Like, it's your emotional stuff with your ego. So pipe down. Let somebody actually speak up. Let somebody get their vocals to actually be able to be exercised, because you may not agree with what they're saying, but in reality, if you just kind of take it down a notch, you might actually learn something different than what your brain has already told you is the correct way. So that's that. I also wanted to cover that during this time, Mercury is in Aquarius, but in retrograde. So this is another thing. You might be saying some shit that you might regret. So you got to be a little bit careful. Say how you feel, but be very careful during this time to understand that your words are absolutely being recorded. I'm going to just put it out there for everybody, because I'm at the point where I'm like, it is what it is. A lot of people do not agree with me on a specific post that I posted not too long ago, and they just kind of like came at me for it. But a lot of people didn't really reach out to ask me exactly what the post was really about. They took their own personal things that formulated towards what I posted, and they kind of just created their own version of what that meant for them. This is what I mean by, like, A, be careful what you say, because A, it also made me realize I really didn't even have to post it. I posted it because I was getting really frustrated by people just assuming that because I was a black woman and because, you know, whatever society had set up in their mind that I'm supposed to have the belief systems because I'm a black woman, that I would be okay with certain conversations, especially in my work area, that I really wasn't okay with. And so I posted it because I was sick of it. But truthfully, what I learned during the situation is that, excuse my French, who gives a fuck what any of you think about my personal opinion? My personal opinion on how I see certain things in the world should not freak you out in your world to where it like flips your mindset and makes you like start attacking people on posts. And I feel like that's kind of what a lot of people feel entitled to do. Number one, you're behind a computer screen or you're behind your phone. So you feel like you can come at people because you can't get punched in the face. And that's the reality of it. I'm not saying that you should be violent, but not everybody in this world is okay with you just popping off about your personal political opinion. And where I'm from back in New Jersey, like, people will pop off at you. So it's just kind of like one of those things where I feel like a lot of people are starting to just say things over posts and not realizing the damage that it could be done without actually clarifying what their actual real feelings are. You might actually be saying the same thing, but because it's different, you don't have patience. Have patience. Be willing to listen to each other and understand that you could actually get into a lot deeper trouble than you think you will, and it's just not worth it. So that's that. So be careful what you're saying. On top of it, we haven't talked about Jupiter. So Jupiter is also in Gemini, but it's also in retrograde. We had Jupiter that went into retrograde, and then it went into Gemini, went back into, it was in Gemini, started its retrograde period in Cancer, and that was a couple months ago, and then it went back into Gemini in retrograde, and it's going to stop being in retrograde, I believe it's March 11th of this year. All this energy that's going on, because Jupiter has everything to do with wisdom, but it's wisdom, which is like more Sagittarius and Pisces energy, since that's the ruling like Jupiter rules those signs. It has to do with wisdom that comes from like actual deep scope of things or from spiritual wisdom. And it's in a sign of very quick energy and fast paced concepts. And so Jupiter being in its sister energy of like its younger sister at that, right? Because Gemini is basically Mercury. Mercury is intelligence, but it's like trickster intelligence. It's giving Joker energy or like the page energy that's in tarot. It's not on the level of understanding like true wisdom. It's not like the Hierophant, or it's not the, I would even say the Hermit. It's not the energy of 9. It's not the energy of true wisdom. The Sagittarius energy that will take the long distance trip to go talk to the horse and have it come, the information come directly out of its mouth, rather than reading like quick newspapers or quick media. But having Jupiter in Gemini, there's going to be freaking just constant media crap that's all over the place. It's going to be so much information. It's going to be so confusing. Lots and lots of propaganda. Lots. People are going to be so ready to tell you their opinion and how they have so much knowledge and how they're so aware and how they, oh my God, I visited X, Y, and Z and, I heard so much information, and it's still just nonsense. It's still fast-paced information that's dressing itself up as like a godfather or a godmother. Like, it's not that energy. It's not the energy of the guru, because the guru is not going to give you fast-paced information that you're not going to be able to process. Guru will actually test you. Guru will actually make sure you're taking in the information, you're really fully like swallowing it and getting the nutrition out of it. It's not going to be quick newspaper flicks or, like, oh, this is what's happening in the media and there's so much wisdom from that. That is going to actually only trigger the energies of Ketu conjunct Moon in Leo, and then the Rahu energy in that obsessive nature conjunct Sun of the ego. That's all it's going to do. And truthfully, when you look at the bigger picture, it's just going to activate all the other nonsense that we're going through. So let's summarize all this together, because this is a lot, right? It's a lot. I also want to call out the fact with Jupiter and Gemini, because it's going to be ending on March 11. Keep in mind, the stuff that was happening during like last summer is all of this shit is going to come to the surface now. All the reality checks, all the stuff that people lied about, all the things that people pretending to have all this knowledge and pretending to be this person that they weren't. Trust me, it's coming out to the forefront. Everything is coming out to the forefront. People cannot hide from themselves for too long. This shit will come to the surface. And the best way to actually understand this concept is if you stay in your lane where you're focused on your energy of your masculine and feminine and knowing when to sit with self, knowing when to listen to the inner parts of your world in order to push that energy outward and get what you need. When you are that person where you're like, I know myself enough to be like, this is what I want and this is how I'm going to go and get it, right? Masculine energy does, but feminine energy is. So that's a big deal. When you sit with your yin and you actually give yourself some time and some space to really process information, and then you actually know how to execute what you want, those people that do not know how to do that, they are 100% going to feel that freaking fiery ass flame up their ass of Ketu's energy combined with the energy of Leo and aspecting Mars in Aquarius. I'm talking about fast-paced information, fast, fluent ways of being like, I don't give a fuck. We're meeting swords energy and in tarot, and like meeting that energy with the fire and the death and rebirth of how Ketu is like, we're done here. We're done with all the extra crap. We're done with all the fakeness. We're done with all of that stuff. Face your shit. And that includes everybody. Everybody. You, family, your mom, your dad, everybody's got to face their shit. And what does that come down to? It comes down to the reality check of where all of your traumas have come from, the reality check of where you have been conditioned to believe certain things. If you got approval issues and you're somebody where you're like constantly needing somebody to validate you, the shit is going to show itself. Fire is going to show up in this. K2 is already super fiery energy, and putting it into Leo, that is like, it's intense fire. But it's also dramatic. It's also theatrical. It's also just And I know this because I have it in my birth chart. So I already know that energy. And having it conjunct my Mars, so I know it. I know how it conjuncts my sun. I know. And that conjunction, that stellium, is in my 8th house. Scorpionic energy, which is blue fire. Like, oh, I know it. The people that I know, that my energy burns your insides just by being around you, and I don't even have to say shit to you because I'm just minding my business, to the point where I have to like make you make moves that change your entire energy. Like, I frustrate you. I make you feel weird because it's parts about yourself that you're just not willing to look at. But my energy is so confident in who I am because of all the shit that I've seen in my life. And because I've chose to not follow footsteps of unfortunate deaths that have happened in my family due to, not like listening to their heart and listening to themselves. If my energy burns your insides to where you can watch my stories, but you can never actually face your shit because there's so many of you and you know who the fuck you are, just know I welcome you to continue to watch, because this girl is going to be her fire. This girl is going to be her phoenix, because that's my birth chart. But seeing this also show up in how the lunar eclipse is offering a little piece of that energy to you guys, because now we've got like Mars in Aquarius, like aspecting that K2 in Leo and tapping into those deeper parts of yourself, that moon. There's going to be a lot of energies of people facing the shit that they came from. And I'm here for it, because people need to face their shit. And yeah, you've got the side of Suki that is totally understanding and totally peaceful and totally like zen. People that know me, they know I hate conflict. But when conflict needs to show up because we need to get through some shit, I have no fucking time to hide your ego. No time for it. Because why? We're only on this life for a very small time. Be yourself. So I'm kind of like, I'm feeling this intensity of this eclipse. But like, I also am watching how it's affecting other people, because welcome. Welcome to the intensity. And also understand, intensity doesn't necessarily mean chaotic. Intensity is more clarity. I had to learn this past couple of weeks. Intensity is the ability to grasp clarity in a certain amount of time frame, whereas destruction or somebody being manipulative is a complete different concept. Aggression is a completely different concept. Intensity is not necessarily aggressive. Aggressive is more so a person who can't handle intensity, and so that control comes up to the surface and has to be aggressive towards that person. But intensity is purely just ultimate clarity. So what I'm excited for everybody to feel is intense clarity, to the point where if it makes you uncomfortable, sorry, you gotta feel it. What I also say is it can totally show up in the detachment of elements of, like I said, the mother or the father, and what that meant for you. And it broke my heart to hear another version of that show up in death, actual death, but like completely broke my heart, because she was like a mom to me too. And I just want to take a second to even acknowledge that, because there's a lot of concern with that. But what I will also say is that her energy speaks loud. What the undertones of her soul spoke, the messages that her soul needed to leave, those things are loud. Those things are showing. Those things are major. And nobody can take her message away. No matter how much they try, her soul means something, and the message behind that soul will still stand no matter what the opposition is. And so this is like, when I tell you, how does this also, like, how could this also show up? There's people right now that are really in like intense battles with their mom. There's people that are in intense emotional battles of really like being like, I see you clearly now. I see what you've done. Or they might see even the idea of the detachment from the mother's vocals in order to see the father's story. why was the father attacked in a certain situation? Or why was the father not necessarily getting, support in certain situations? It's a detachment from one side of the story to be able to see the other side clearly, to be able to really understand and fully presently accept it. This is a strong fucking energy. I'm keeping it real. It's strong. I'm not really somebody that likes to overly curse, but I'm here. I'm at this moment because it's some strong shit. It is. And I just want to take a second for people to understand, it's always going to show up at the end of the day. Even just the fact that Jupiter is in Gemini in retrograde right now, and it's now in its second portion, everything from last summer, all of the stuff is going to show up. The wisdom that was once said on fast, quick energy, things that came up just out of reading a newspaper or propaganda, or just swift, charming energy where you were able to lie on somebody's name, the shit is going to show up. It is going to show up heavy. Because true wisdom and true guru energy a lot of times takes silence. It takes sitting with self. It doesn't just show up just because you decided to order the subscription for it. You got to do the work. You got to do the work. And that's why I love that Saturn and Venus are actually disciplined right now. Mind you, I will be so honest with you. I got a lot of these placements that are happening are actually returns for me. I have Saturn and Venus in the 4th house in my Navamsa. I've got, K2 conjunct my Mars and my Sun. So the energies of seeing K2 opposing Sun and Mars, together, it's still very potent energy. It shows up a little bit different. But, when I tell you, I'm just here for all this clarity because I am so sick and tired of people hiding from themselves. Show who the fuck you are. And if you've got a shitty character in life, then people need to see that so they can see who the hell they're really dealing with, because that's the only way you're going to grow. It's the only way you're going to change. You're not changing for any other reason. You're not going to change unless you're forced with back against the wall to see yourself. That's everybody in life. I don't care how much you were the princess or the king in your family or whatever have you. I don't care how much, you're trying to change and be a better person. You still have to face all of that ugliness, all of the parts of you that also just doesn't listen to self, all the parts of you that doesn't understand that there is a beauty to the ego as much as there is a beauty to understanding how to work with it. You have to face your shit. And if it doesn't feel good, ultimately it doesn't mean that you need to grab all this outside energy that has nothing to do with you in order to pretend that you can take that energy out on, political things or this and that. You are the politics at the end of the day. Your inner shit needs to be handled before you can even vocalize what's going on outside of you. I'm here for the energy that challenges the rhetoric. I'm here for the energy that challenges all of it and says, yeah, you could speak on what you're feeling in society, but understand the external is only just another loop that started in the internal. Just because you join a social cause does not stop you from having the same effect in your own inner world. You might be participating to speak up about something socially and don't even realize that social awareness that you're speaking on is actually somewhat replicating your internal chaos. And so you need to face that shit before you start vocalizing all this wisdom that you're pointing out to other people, just so that way you can be a part of societal acceptance. And I'm just keeping it real. That's the reality of it. The reality of it is you have prana. You have separation. You have ego. You're not mixed in with everybody else to the point where you can hide. Your shit is going to come to the surface. And if you are standing by social concepts, but you're illuminating something very different, your character is going to be exposed. And the reality is that you cannot be great enough to fight for something and fill other people's cups when you don't listen to your own cup. So this is a chance for you to really face it. This is a chance for you to really ask yourself, what is my soul really trying to say to me? What is my spirit really trying to get me to shine out loud? So I'm not obsessive about the things that I can't control, and I'm focused on the things that I want to feel can be actually executed outward into action. That's the summary of all of it. But don't get distracted by the chaos other than that. Don't think that just because things are loud outside that people can't see you. Because they can. And it says it in the Bible. Just like when Jesus or Yeshua made those parables, those who have the ears will hear, those who have the eyes will see. Those who cannot understand and be able to translate things like King James Version or understand the parables are because you're not getting close enough to him to understand it. You're not getting close enough to God to really process it. You're pretending. You're acting. You are creating a character. Your ego is running the story. And you're judging other people based off of what you are pretending to carry, because the wisdom that you're pretending, see, this particular in the United States, we are so admired by charm that literally someone just trying to learn and understand spirit will get like thrashed at just because society needs the approval. And just because there's numbers, there's multiple people in a group telling this one person who dare to be different, oh, you're wrong, oh, you're demonic, oh, you're this or you're that. Now those people think that they have a point. When if you test them, just like you would test the spirit, you realize that their character is aligned with all them damn familiar spirits that they're trying to sit there and claim that you have. And in reality, they don't even know their own book. In reality, they don't even know how to even understand and interpret someone else's opinion just because it's different than theirs. And I'm not coming for Christianity because that's not the point of this concept. What I'm saying to you is this. I love God. I am learning to work with Yeshua because this is newer for me. But that doesn't deny Vishnu or deny Muhammad or deny Buddha or deny any Ra or deny like any of the other cultures, gods and goddesses, just because it's different. I will not sit there and look at other people that just because they're not a part of the social club as being lesser than, and I damn sure would never be messaging nobody any verses or anything just because they have a different way of life. Do not do that. That is force, and that is not something that the particular person that you're following, right? The particular energy, you're following the sun, you're following Jesus, you're following Yeshua. That's not what he stood for. So I'm just saying this full-fledged, and no, this has been energy that I guess I wasn't even prepared to share. And the Mercury in retrograde is not going to make me feel any different, because these are things that I feel like I've held on to, that I'm revisiting to speak on them. And that's how you truly use Mercury in retrograde's energy, is bringing up things from the past that need to be reviewed. What I'm saying to you is this. Be yourself. Talk to yourself. Speak on what means something to you. Get to know who you are. I promise you, you will enrage so many people, but fuck them. Be yourself. Do not worry about how other people will show up to tell you about what you need to be and who you need to be and how you need to be. Your love for God, if you have it, is your personal experience. The kingdom of God is within you. You being different than somebody else and not being, the majority of the group's opinion doesn't mean that you should naturally be demonized. Be who you are. That is the beauty of this Rahu in Aquarius energy. Be who you are. But also understand that at the end of the day, this is not a battle between you and other people. This is a battle of you accepting who you are. And if it takes for you to have to detach from certain people to be healthier, even if it comes down to your own parents, then you need to do it. Because at the end of the day, that is basically what this eclipse is saying. When it comes to your roots, when it comes to where you're from, if you've got to detach from that in order to be who you are, guess what? It doesn't mean that those people don't matter, but simply that maybe the energy that you're leading with is exactly what will free them from the very thing that caused your trauma in the first place. Because then they can be relieved of the generational shit that came with that. And now you being connected to your energy, you being connection to your emotions, you being connected to your how to execute what you want. That is going to be the representative. That is going to be the example. That is going to be the new standard that's being set to go forward. And trust me, your inner child, your soul, your spirit, and God is very proud of you for allowing that part of you to show. But please, by all means, don't get sucked into the societal shit because it's loud right now. And if you feel called to speak on a social understanding of something, do it, but do it because you wanted to do it. Don't do it to get clout, because trust and believe that shit will show up in the future. And that's just the reality. So that's pretty much what this eclipse energy is. Let it free you. Let it make you nuts. Because that's why it's illuminated. That's why the sun is sitting directly at the moon to stare at it and be like, what's up? What's up? I'm shining my light on your emotions. What's up? But I feel freeing now with all that I shared. Shockingly, I did not mean to share this. I got in the car so I can get some food. Thought I was going to talk about the eclipse really fast. And, you know, like, it was what it was. But I will say, ultimately, with it being in Purva Phalguni, this is a beautiful energy to see what desire, like, means truly for you, what you desire, how to rest. Because Purva Phalguni is also about resting. It's about enjoying life's beautiful pleasures. And a lot of that has to do with giving up the need to always control a situation. And that is something that, like, I don't think a lot of people understand. And then when you look at Ketu and Moon are conjunct, and Ketu is in Purva Phalguni, Rahu is in Shatabisha. Shatabisha, if you guys have seen my previous post that I posted it earlier, like a couple days ago, has everything to do with, like, inner healing. It has to do with holistic healing. It also, I mean, there's a bit of a difference between Ashwini and Shatabisha, so there's definitely some energies when it comes to, like, chemical healing. And, like, specifically, I'll be honest with you guys, like, I have the lunar eclipse right now for one of my signs, of the sun, moon, or rising, depending, I'm sorry, not of the moon or rising. You shouldn't follow your sun whenever you're looking at, the horoscopes, but when it comes to my moon and rising on both of my charts of the D1 of the Rasi chart, the birth chart, and then the D9 chart, the Navamsa, I've got Rahu in Shatabisha house in one of those signs. And that's really hard because, like, my dog right now, for those that know, my dog started getting seizures and he was doing really well. Well, today he actually had a seizure around like 3 o'clock. And I kind of was expecting it because I knew that I had Rahu and Shatabisha in my 6th house. And I accidentally did not give him the right medicine because there's a lot going on right now with, like, my attention. And due to that, I don't know if that's the reason, but he didn't, like, take well to not having it. And he had a seizure. So, like, I already kind of figured that this might happen. But the energy of Shatabisha is actually more of, like, it's more of the 100 gods, or, like, that's another way of saying the Shatabisha. It's the 100 doctors or 100 healers, more so. Not 100 gods, but more 100 healers. This kind of energy can actually be pretty obsessive about, like, chemicals or things that are really supposed to heal you, but they're not necessarily holistic in the sense of, like, more Ashwini energy, which is more like an Aries nakshatra. Shatabisha is an Aquarius nakshatra, so it has everything to do with, like, experimental drugs and certain things like that. Me personally, I do not enjoy at all any kind of chemical concepts, but, like, having that in the 6th house, I can understand why it's a problem for me, because I feel like there's this 6th house conflict, because 6th house is conflict, But it also has to do with the pets. The pets are in the 6th house. So having that Shatabisha energy, and it's conjunct the energy, opposing the K2 conjunct moon, me as a mother, I have to also be careful about how I'm medicating my dog. And that just shows up right off the bat. I could show you guys right off the bat. I am very serious about being a dog mom. But my lack of the ability of remembering today that I needed to be a mom, which is that conjunct energy of the detachment of it, right? Totally forgot. I was just in mode of just getting things together. And I'm thinking I'm doing other things, but my dog ultimately needed me to be the mother. And it honestly resulted in there being an issue from me not giving him that Shatabisha energy, not giving him that medication, resulted in that concept of death and rebirth. And I'm not saying that that means my dog is going to die, and I hope that does not happen, because I would feel absolutely horrible with this message at this point. I've prayed over this a million times for my dog not to have this problem. But when you think of a seizure is basically a malfunction that resets in the brain. And so it's the death and rebirth concept, the death and rebirth. So it's that energy of that seizure can absolutely showcase in this, is what I'm basically saying. It's a reboot, and it has everything to show for how those things happen. And hopefully I'm a very real person. I would absolutely hate if something really did happen long term to my dog in this point in period. I would obviously, like I said, I have a little bit of a different relationship with death, and I try to just veer away from even thinking that that can happen. But at the same token, if those type of things can happen during an eclipse because of that death and rebirth aspect. And I'm just hoping that it already stood for what it was. And I'm being real with you guys, because at the end of the day, no matter how much I don't want to face those things, it's a reality. No matter how much it hurts me to have a reality that my dog has seizures, it's a reality. And that's the energy of why sitting with yourself is so important, because had I not sat with myself on this stuff, I wouldn't be available to talk about it out in the open to help others. So after this long video, or multiple videos, at least you guys have an understanding that if you are dealing with some stuff that's really heavy, just know it's not your fault. This is just a part of the world and cycles. And even if you are somebody that is deeply into Christianity or spirituality or certain texts or whatever have you, even though they're very different concepts, there's text and religion and then spirituality, also know that even in Christianity, it says it in Genesis that we're going to be using the stars for direction. And so at the end of the day, dude, we're made of stardust. I don't know how more obvious that could be, but by all means, listen, if you want to believe Pharisee concepts that they tell you that, you know what I mean, that you are going to be damned if you follow an understanding that the kingdom of God is within you, not in the midst of you, not surrounding you, not among you, whatever the damn translations have changed it to. Read the King James Version. The kingdom of God is within you. Done deal. If you want to go to church and you want to have community to celebrate God, that is beautiful. But do not have these people tricking you to think that you have some type of access by going to church. You have access just by talking to God, by getting on your knees and having a prayer. And the church is present to be able to usher you into more of that relationship. But don't ever let anybody from any religion or anything like that outside of you tell you about your voice that God gave you and the voice that you're receiving from God, to have that discernment enough to acknowledge whether it is something for you, or if you believe in familiar spirits, if it's something against you. But the relationship with you and God is between you and God. The relationship between you and Yeshua, or you and Muhammad, or you and Buddha, or whoever is between you and God. But anyway, now that I have allowed my personal experience to come out to the forefront, nobody can say, oh, I never seen that side of her. Well, now, welcome. Know that I do not give a shit. And also understand that those who also don't care and want to be themselves, I want you in my circle, because I am here for people that are not afraid to be them and do not care about trends and do not care about what everybody else is doing. your relationship to source and access to source is something that's so powerful, and all of us have the ability to connect to it, but we're too busy getting approval from people that literally, like, they stink. They smell just like anybody when, you know, they wake up and they don't shower. Like, there's no special gifts from these people, and you don't need their approval at all. Be your fucking self. Be beautiful. Be bold. Do whatever the hell you want as long as it doesn't hurt other people. Love whoever the hell you want. Praise whoever the hell, whatever. Like, be a good human. That's it. That's Aquarius. That's Rahu in Aquarius. Be a good human. That is it. That is the gist of it. That is what it says in the New Testament. That is what all of the religious texts are trying to get you to understand. That is what Guru is trying to tell you. That's what God's trying to tell you. Be a good person. Have a good character. If you don't, face your shit. Work on yourself. And things will work out. But don't always look to the crowd to cover you. Get that energy from really sitting with self. And you will be okay. All right. Peace, love, and happiness. Bye. Enjoy.